Each day in Ukraine brings new escalation. This Monday, Kiev launching a fresh offensive to retake Sloviansk 2 days after the release of OSCE observers in that separatist-held city. But rather than turn the tide, gains by the government are usually coupled with news of pro-Moscow flashpoints propping up new ones, that is, from the Black Sea port of Odessa, where the pro-Kiev crowd's been answering back. This Monday, there's been mourning for the dead. More than 40 killed Friday, and the worst day of violence since the fall of Viktor Yanukovych back in February. Some drawing comparisons with the Balkans in the 90s, wondering if it's the start of civil war. After the annexation of Crimea, Moscow keeping troops on its side of the border for now, but making crystal clear that it's dead set against the staging of a presidential election on May the 25th. If the plan is to scuttle the vote, it is fair to say fair to say that it's already mission accomplished? And as for the West and its talk of stepped-up sanctions, how much are its leaders willing to stake to save what's left of Ukraine's territorial integrity? Today in the France 24 debate, we are asking if we are heading towards civil war. And with us to talk about it, Ukrainian FEMEN activist Ina SHEVCHENKO. Welcome back to the show. I want to welcome as well from Moscow, Dmitry BABICH, columnist and journalist for The Voice of Russia, French reporter, and NIVAT, who's been covering events there. Thank you for being with us. Anton, who teaches at the American Graduate School, and Camille, director of the Foundation for Strategic Research. Welcome to the show. The France 24 debate, where you can join the conversation, and you have on Facebook and Twitter our hashtag F24debate. Ina SHEVCHENKO, let's start with the latest here. Sloviansk, this Monday, the government tries to go in, 4 of its troops killed, a helicopter shot down. We heard this morning on the radio the French foreign minister saying that basically Kiev is in a damned if you do, damned if you don't posture. Was it the right move to go in there?
Well, you know, today, every minute there is a new report on a new helicopter crashed, on a new death, on new tortured people. And what is disturbing me most today is that the difference between news that are presented for European public, by world media, and news that are coming from Ukrainian journalists who are right there at the place are in fact very different. Because right now, even you are asking us the question if there is a civil war. If you call it civil war, then let's be precise that this is not the time when
in fairness, the question is, are we heading towards civil war?
Well, but let's already start to answer. We have to be precise. If we would call this civil war, it's not a war between Ukrainians. It's a war between Russian people sent by Putin who are coming to fight Ukrainians. This is war not between Ukrainians, but against Ukrainians. And today there is a discussion about Geneva agreements. And in fact, Ukraine is following Geneva agreements. But can we say the same about Russian side? Every new minute we receive news how a new city is in danger in front of new military intervention. Right now, in my native town, Kherson, there were 50 Russian separatists were taken out from train just 1 hour ago on their way to Odessa. Why they're coming there? To protect Russian borders? I don't think so. So here I really want to start with a very important point, that it's not a war between Ukrainians, it's a war against Ukrainians.
All right, Ina, let me get your reaction to the report that was filed by France 24's Douglas Herbert. On Sunday, he was in the city of Lugansk, and it looked a lot like preparations for something.
The army of the southeast is recruiting. In front of this building held by pro-Russian separatists, the civilians of Lugansk are getting a hands-on lesson in how to assemble a Kalashnikov.
If you unlock the security latch like this, you can kill someone. We don't want war, but it can't hurt to know how to use this. You know, in case you need to defend yourself. In order to save your life.
The separatist leader of this city of 500,000 near the Russian border has served an ultimatum to local military commanders: swear allegiance or get out. Many of Lugansk's young men need no convincing.
I love my fatherland, my Donbass. I want to fight to defend it, to the very end. If I'm killed, well, that's fate.
Even those far too old to fight are ready to heed the battle cry.
My son has already taken a weapon in one hand, and if needed, he'll take one in the other. Even I'm ready to hurl a Molotov cocktail.
It's been a month since pro-Russian militants seized control of Lugansk's security agency. But the mood is tenser than ever as the Ukrainian army steps up its drive against separatist strongholds. As a man pours tea, shots ring out nearby. Armed separatists rush towards the barricade. A man has been struck by a bullet. A separatist administers first aid.
I didn't see who shot me.
Rumors are rife in Lugansk that the Ukrainian army is on its way, and that civil war is a real possibility. The tragedy of Odessa weighs heavily on a town that fears it could be next.
Now, SHEVCHENKO, I don't know how serious those people are we heard in that report about whether or not they really want to fight, but what is certain is that they are Ukrainian and they look dead set against the authorities in Kiev.
Well, I think that if we will talk about any country, even France right now, we will always find people with different opinion, right? But today there was a report by a Russian expert who, in fact, confirmed that, for example, in Crimean referendum, there were 15% of Crimean population who, in fact, vote for Crimea becoming part of Russia.
But your 15%. Reaction to what you saw there in that report in Lugansk?
I will never deny that there are people who are maybe would be in favor of I don't know, joining Russia or going back with their nostalgia to USSR, and they do really believe that this is what, in fact, they are doing. I think that we have to be also precise about what Ukrainian population is and what Ukrainian society is. This country had only one revolution in the history of independence. It's Orange Revolution, and today we are living the second one. People politically are not educated. People politically were never really involved. And today they are just in the middle of a war, something that no one could expect before. And of course, they're becoming victims of Russian propaganda that is doing it very carefully. And not only Ukrainian people are becoming victims of this propaganda, because today we can see headlines of world media who are also reporting exactly the same that Russia Today agency is reporting, that is just turning abnormally all information. So, but still, it's not the fact to say that, to show this minority of people, to say that this is the crowd all over Ukraine that are fighting with the same ideas. I repeat again that why people are fighting, why Ukrainian people are in the street in each of their city, they are there to say that finally we are Ukrainians, we identify ourselves as Ukrainians, and we want to keep our independence, and we fight for very basic human rights, something that for every European person can seem like something very normal.
All right, lots of reactions coming in. One saying that there is no doubt that this is Putin's civil war. It's made in Russia. Dmitry BABICH, your reaction to that viewer.
I think it's an abject lie, and the person who wrote it does not understand anything, neither in Russia nor in Ukraine. And it's just preposterous to hear here something about propaganda. When, for example, when you started this program, you said that 40 people were killed in Odessa. Yes, but in what way? These were, even as the Western press reported it, pro-Russian activists who were locked up in a building and burnt alive. And what was especially stunning was the fact that...
themselves up and tossed Molotov cocktails at people.
Yes, in order to burn themselves. That's what we heard from the Kiev government, that they tossed Molotov cocktails and burned themselves in this way. This is the most abnormal thing about what's going on. And this is the reason why such a peaceful, nice country as Ukraine is now suddenly divided, and you see these people in Lugansk preparing to defend themselves. The problem is that on the Facebook and in the Ukrainian liberal and nationalist media, you see people openly rejoicing about what happened in Odessa instead of staying petrified, terrified by what happened. They write that separatists were burned. You know, in the moment when that building was burning, I read in the newspaper, Ukrainskaya Pravda, you know, this internet resource helped by the European Union, that, I quote, separatists are being smoked out of the building. So this is the reason why you have such, I would say, estrangement, why you have people in Donetsk and in Lugansk so up in arms against the new government in Kiev. And let's remember how it all started. It all grew out of a minor problem. The former president Yanukovych, bad as he was, he just asked for a very small thing, to postpone the signing of association agreement with the European Union. And the European Union did not agree. They didn't believe a single word from him, just like they don't believe now a single word from Russia. The European Union is incapable of dialogue. When Yanukovych suggested trilateral talks between Brussels, Kiev, and Moscow to resolve the problem in November last year, it was the European Union that said, no, we don't want dialogue. We're going to talk to you only. So now we have all of these tragic events which became a consequence of a relatively minor disagreement.
Okay,
the EU is incapable of dialogue. That's the truth.
And NIVAT, your reaction, obviously there's been a lot happening the last 48 hours. Let's bring it perhaps more to the present here. On Friday, there were those clashes in Odessa. Our correspondent there, Gulliver Cragg, says that he did see some people from right sector, this far-right group, which you don't see in eastern Ukraine at all. There were some there, but obviously that only tells part of the picture. Everybody has their own narrative.
Well, yes, and you know, I wasn't there, so don't count on me to say, you know, who was there and who wasn't. I have no idea if Pravy sector was in Odessa or if that it was not in Donetsk. And I don't think that's what's very interesting, so interesting for your audience. I think what's interesting is trying to understand or to give some perspective, a little bit broader perspective on this, this big problem that is happening in Ukraine right now, which is, you know, of course we are having problems in naming it. Is it a civil war? Is it not a civil war? I covered a civil war in Iraq. I know what is a real civil war. I wouldn't say that what is happening right now in Ukraine is a civil war, but maybe it is heading towards a civil war. Of course, by saying now that it is a civil war, we are playing Russia's game, because, of course, the Kremlin would like us to impose the idea that it is a civil war, and that because it is a civil war, the presidential election of May 25th should not happen, should not be organized. This is politics. It's a political game. Now, de-escalation has not taken place. What we are now all witnessing is a sort of escalation. You have two parts, very opinionated, which we heard just now. You gave floor to Inna SHEVCHENKO. She gave her opinion. Then you gave floor to Babich, who has a completely antagonistic opinion. So, and I'm neither Ukrainian nor Russian. I'm just an observer. And believe me, it's not easy to be an observer. To me, what is really important is that games are being played, and the Kremlin is playing quite well. I mean, do we like it or not in the West? We have to accept, to acknowledge the fact that I was in Crimea when the so-called men in green appeared, you know, and I was shocked myself, because as a war reporter, usually when I see soldiers, you know, they are fighting. What I saw in Crimea was an abundance of those men, heavily armed, and they were not fighting. Amazing. And they took Crimea. I was there. I reported on that. They took Crimea. Crimea now seems to be belonging to Russia. But what is in Putin's head? Is it a strategy for the East? I have no idea.
Camille?
No, I think it's very difficult to foresee what will happen in the next few days. What is clear is that at the moment, there are very strong forces, probably supported by Russia, that don't want the Ukrainian election to take place in a good environment. because that would undermine the legitimacy of the future Ukrainian president. So on the 25th of May, we have this election coming, which could be normally the beginning of a political process that would allow a serious discussion on what future for Ukraine, what sort of political regime will be set in place in Ukraine, what sort of relationship with the EU, with Russia, and that should be the normal political process. But at the moment, there are those who want to make clear that those elections will not take place in a proper environment, so therefore that the future president will not be legitimate, and possibly they will succeed because if half of the country is not in a position to hold the elections properly, that could be the outcome of the current events. But I think it's a sort of short-term objective to delegitimize the future Ukrainian president. And after that, of course, there are extremists on both sides that tend to use violence. There are cases that aren't completely unacceptable. I would like to point out that the fact that in the case of the Odessa tragedy, the first reaction of the European Union was to call for a very precise investigation, not to say that it was to overlook it or anything of the sort, but to say we need to have this conversation and we need to investigate this case because this is a tragedy and there is no
but no one listens. No one listens what the European Union is saying.
That is one of the problems, of course.
All right, Anton KOSLOV, do you agree? And again, I get back to that question we posed at the outset, the one put by the French foreign minister on the radio this morning, which is Kiev's government is damned if it goes in with troops to eastern Ukraine and damned if it doesn't.
Well, I'm not so sure. I think the problem that we have today is that clearly the government in Kiev is very weak. And we can see that with the Ukrainian army, with the police that does not obey, with the troops basically refusing to execute orders, and so on and so forth. On one hand, they do have Ukrainian nationalists. They do have the right-wing groups. They have the right sector. They have Svoboda, and on and on and on. On the other hand, they have the eastern part where people are pro-Russian. They are anti-government. They refuse to recognize the legitimacy of the government. And they've got a point on that. So you also have to keep in mind that Ukrainian politics are largely clan-based politics from different regions, and different political groups represent different clans, financed by different clans, different oligarchs. So it is a very murky web of relations. So we do have, I would say, in the eastern part of Ukraine, we do have a civil war because you have Ukrainian soldiers, Ukrainian citizens shooting at Ukrainian citizens. Most of them are Ukrainian citizens, not maybe all of them, but on Maidan you had Armenians, you had Belarusians, and so on and so forth.
So what should Kiev's government do?
Well, that's something I've been saying all along. They should negotiate. They definitely should talk. If they cannot win militarily, and I don't think they can really, they should definitely engage into negotiations.
All right, we're going to pick up with the rest of the panel because there's a lot more to say on this. Stay with us. You're watching the France 24 debate.